good way to start it.
Well, good. Good icebreaker. We get started?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to our panel today. This is 25 Years of 5 Keys, a Beatmania retrospective by Calpies and
Dark Chow.
Thank you very much.
Woo!
I'd like to thank MagFest for allowing us to host this panel and all of you in the audience for attending tonight. MagFest, as you know, is an abbreviation of Music and Gaming Festival, and as such, I believe it's the ideal convention for learning about and playing music games. But first, before we go on, does anybody know what MagFest was originally an abbreviation of? Anybody in the audience? Anybody? Anyone? Yes, you, sir.
Maryland Area Gaming Festival?
Not quite.
Ooh, they like me.
Right. Anyone? We have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. Yes?
Magic and Gathering.
That's right.
It's Mid-Atlantic Gaming Festival.
Mid-Atlantic Gaming Festival. All right. We put that there because we want to get you in the mood for answering trivia questions later.
All right, they get weirder.
They get a little weird. They get a bit obscure. All right. So anyhow, in addition to being the ideal convention for learning about and playing music games, it's also the ideal timing to present a panel about Beatmania. 25 years ago, December 10th, 1997, was the release of the first game in Japanese arcades, and 20.5 years ago was the release of the last Beatmania game, Beatmania the Final. And with the ideal timing and the ideal convention, I think this is a good opportunity to reflect on the origins of the Bemani franchise. For those of you who don't know what Bemani is, it's the collective name for any music games made by Konami. But does anyone in the audience know what Bemani was originally an abbreviation of? Anybody? Yes, you, Caldenza.
GMD.
Oh, not quite.
Am I correct?
What was it originally an abbreviation of? Bemani. Bemani.
Oh, Beatmania.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, original name of Bemani. Which
The sound design team. I'm
Yes.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
I see. All right. Let's. All right. So now that we've introduced the time and the occasion, let's introduce ourselves again. I am Calpies. That's Calpies, aka Calp or Calp 5K. This is me. This is my son, and this is my grandson here. I've been a player of various music games for 20 plus years, and of those music games, I would say I'm most enthusiastic about Beatmania specifically. So much so that I would dub myself as sort of quote-unquote historian about it. I've also created a Discord related to Beatmania called Beatmania featuring Discord Comes True. There is an invite link over there on the slide if you're interested. You can take a picture of the slide. Or at the end of the panel, we will have a QR code that you can scan. I am a contributor / Discord mod of RemiWiki, which is a wiki for Konami music games. And finally, in my professional and spare time, I am a translator in the Japanese to English language direction. All right, take it away, Dark Chow.
Yeah, so my online handle is Dark Chow. I'm Eric Holniger. I have been playing 5-button music games for over 20 years. I was a Konami content creator, and this is back when I was like 16. I've been a developer for Pump It Up Pro 2, Pump It Up Infinity, Neon FM, and the etc. is some other projects that either aren't worth mentioning or didn't see the light of day like dance tracks. I am the founder and co-owner of SavePoint. We're currently located in Union Bridge, Maryland, but quite frankly, more of SavePoint is located downstairs in the arcade right now. And I do have a very extensive background with Beatmania and really ridiculous, obscure Konami and Sega hardware.
It's really ridiculous. All right. So now that we've introduced ourselves, let's get back to audience participation again. So, raise your hand if you are a fan of the original Beatmania series. Yes, that is a good number to see. All right.
Well, hopefully more of you will be able to raise your hands after this.
Yes, and raise your hand if you are a music gamer who's familiar with Beatmania. Oh my goodness, there we go. That is good. Any music gamers who are not familiar with Beatmania? Anybody? All right,
There's a few, all right.
There's a few. There we go. And any just gamers interested in arcade games in general? There you go. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. There we go. All right. So it looks like most of you fit into one of those categories, but even if you don't, thank you again for coming to our panel today, and we hope that what we have will make it worth your time. All right. so let's quickly go over a outline of how the panel's going to go. First, I'm going to present a overview of the Beatmania games, and then
I'm going to go over the hardware of the Beatmania games.
Right, and then we're going to join each other again, and we're going to make some closing remarks regarding the Beatmania games, and then finally,
we're going to do a Q&A session.
yes. We do have a brief apology to give beforehand. We did advertise a live demonstration. However, due to time reasons, we're going to have to omit that from the presentation. We apologize for the minor disappointment, but we do have trivia and fabulous prizes. All right. Yep, that's right. So,
I was going to say, before you get too excited,
yes.
The fabulous prizes are, they're a little obscure. You might not have ever seen one of these, depending on how old you are, but
Here we go.
now, and you get the choice. We have a few data discs, and then we have full unlock discs. So the full unlock discs are for Beatmania 3, the final, and when you put it in, it's a fully unlocked profile, essentially. I'm going to call it a profile. It's, I don't know what they call them. The play data disc is, it's not quite blank, but it gives you a very good starting point.
Yes.
So I'm going to go over that real quick.
Yes, that's correct. The play data disc actually comes with a, it's for the first Beatmania 3 game, and it comes with a way to unlock a one-time ending that you can only see once. But if you want to use it with Beatmania 3, the final, that's fine. And then the disc on the right, as Dark Child said, unlocks everything in Beatmania 3, the final. And also, I want to give a shout out to Deep Sea Squeeze, who is a user in our Beatmania Discord, for creating these floppy labels here that I handily printed out. So, all right. Now, first up is an overview of the Beatmania games, starring me, Calpiece. All right. So, this slide is going to show a brief list of topics I will be talking about, which are the core gameplay, gameplay changes, origins, and evolution. And to set the tone for the panel, I'd like to play a video of the first game's introduction. So here we go, and hopefully this will play. Yes. With audio?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go.
I just love how that last sample just like reverberates. It just gets you ready to insert your coins and press that start button. Ready? All right. So, let's start off with the core gameplay here. I'm first going to explain the interface and the controls, the judgment and the group gauge, the results screen, and finally a summary of the basic flow of gameplay. And there's a lot of music gamers in the audience, and some of you are going to say, this is obvious stuff to me. Well, imagine 25 years ago, this literally didn't exist. Konami had to invent a lot of these concepts that you're going to see. So, to explain the interface and controls, I'm going to show a video of Beatmania's tutorial stage and then briefly summarize the concepts on the next slide. So, here comes another video. And just a side note, in the first game, it actually had a plot. This is the club owner, and you are a rookie DJ in Club Sagala. Yep.
Hi, how are you doing?
His lips.
Wrong. First, we have to complete. When you all get down here,
So did you see that yellow text that came up? I'm going to explain that in an upcoming slide.
you'll be fine.
You sure remember it?
Just keep your eyes engaged and relax. Wasn't too bad. Let's go on to the scratch game. Cool. This is all I can show you.
Okay, here we go.
Who are you playing?
Here comes my favorite moment of the entire
Get every
video.
Good luck.
There we go. Yeah, I love it. That is DJ Konami's winning style. All right, so let's go over a summary of what we just saw. So the controls are on each side of the cabinet. As you can handily see right there, there are 5 keys laid out like a piano, or 5 buttons I should say, which are called keys because they are laid out like a piano. and there is a turntable to the right of each key. And each key / turntable is represented by a column on the screen here. The notes scroll down toward the judgment line, and when they reach the judgment line, you want to hit them. And whenever you hit or scratch the turntable, it generates sound in time to the music. And in addition to that, you receive judgments according to how close or how far you were from that judgment line. And finally, it's not on this screen here, but you'll see it on the next slide. The groove gauge will increase or decrease accordingly. On to the next one. So first, let's talk about the judgments here. I'll use these next few pictures to describe how they work. So the best judgment you can get in the first couple of Beatmania games is called a great! Exclamation point. So means you pretty much hit on time. The next one is a good, where you're slightly early or slightly late. Let me see if I can turn on this laser pointer. Better illustrate. There you go.
Nice.
Yep. So good will be right about here, right about here. And so a bad is where you are way early or way late. And also, whenever you get a bad or a worse in these games, one of these background animations or background stills will play to remind you of your accomplishment.
They are all awesome.
Every single one of them is awesome. You'll see some of them later. And finally, in the first game, the worst judgment is appropriately called worst. So, basically it means you either missed the note entirely or you hit any time there wasn't a note. So, now let's talk about the groove gauge, which I've highlighted here in this oval. So, to indicate how well or how poorly your performance is, Beatmania uses what's called a groove gauge. It's sort of like a life bar. Each person, one player, two player, has their own groove gauge shown in the bottom center area of the screen. When you receive a judgment, if the groove gauge is not already at the highest or lowest point, you will receive either an increase or a decrease, depending on which judgment you received. And finally, when the song ends, the groove gauge level at the end of the song determines whether you cleared or you failed it. If you're in the red here, that means you cleared it, and then if it's not in the red, then that means you failed the song. And speaking of after the song, the game takes you to the results screen. The first screen presents the following information. Whether you cleared or failed the stage, the graph of the groove gauge level, which is basically the last groove level you're at when the song ended. And then the stage score, which is usually out of 100,000, and you can earn some bonuses. And finally, your total score across all stages. And again, if you clear the stage, you get this nice red background and the audience cheers your amazing performance. But if you fail the stage, you get a melancholy blue background and the audience jeers and boos you while you feel bad. So, also in the first game, it has something called expert mode, and the results screen also differs in expert mode. It has most of the information that I mentioned before, except the main difference is, instead of scores, it displays the judgment counts that you got during the song. So, alright, let's talk about a summary of the core gameplay of any Beatmania that you play. So, step 1, select the mode. Step 2, select the song. Step 3, hit notes in time to the song. Step 4, receive results. Step 5, repeat 2 and 4 until you clear final stage or fail stage. Step 6, enter your name on the scoreboard or see your DJ level. And step 7, watch or play around during the credits. Alright. Everybody got that? Good. All right. As this collage hopefully illustrates, thank you to the one person who attempted to clap there. Great. Thank you.
I did want to touch on something real quick.
Yes,
You
go ahead.
mentioned played around during the credits. I think you make a tsunami there. So I did want to touch on, for those who haven't had a chance to experience 5K Beatmania, when he said play around with the credits, like we're like, what? The credits display almost, they display where the background animations normally would. It shows you the whole staff roll, but they're kind enough to give you samples to go along with the credits and music that's playing, so you can,
Play around.
you're the DJ
Hit the key.
of those credits.
Yep. So, anyway, thank you. As this collage hopefully illustrates, the core gameplay of the Beatmania series remained mostly consistent through the other 12 other titles, but there were some changes along the way. And speaking of awesome segues, I'll take this time to point out the notable changes to gameplay throughout the series history. So, first up is the changes to the judgments. After the first Beatmania, a few changes were introduced to the judgments. In Beatmania's second mix, the worst judgment was changed to poor, which it is still called in Beatmania 2DX to this day. And furthermore, in Beatmania third mix, the behavior for pours was changed. So instead of receiving pours if you hit a note when there's nothing on the screen, you just receive pours if you hit a note too many times. And next, in Beatmania Complete Mix, a brand new judgment was added called the Flashing Grade. See right here? Its timing is stricter than that of a regular grade, and its score value is thereby doubled. And as such, during normal gameplay, the maximum score value for a single song was raised from $100,000 to $200,000. And then the results screen also saw some changes throughout the series. In Beatmania second mix onward, the screen now includes the total notes in the song and the number of judgments that you earned, which was previously only available in expert mode. And from Complete Mix onward, because they added the flashing grade judgment, they also added the number of flashing grades. So, and this format you see right here, it was the same format that was used for the majority of the other Beatmania games, with a few exceptions, like Club Mix in the final. A lot of the Beatmania games counted your combo during song, but not all of them told you what your max combo was on the result screen, but Club Mix in the final did. And in addition to that, it also tells you the current stage number that you were on. Next is 7th Mix, which added an incredibly important feature, which I don't know why they didn't add that in the first game, which is the name of the song that you just played.
Okay, so hold on a second. You say that, but there's a game that I'm slightly familiar with. It comes from Korea. It's a dancing game. They didn't put that on their results screen until maybe 2015, 2016.
What game could that be?
I don't know. I think it's called.
Anyone knows? Can you tell us later? All right.
I think you guys could.
Alright, so, and finally, in Beatmania the final, the screen now includes the song's difficulty. The difficulty mode of the song you played. So, now let's talk about changes to expert mode, which I very briefly mentioned earlier. In the original Beatmania, you could play something called expert, which consists of a single set of predetermined songs, 7 songs to be exact, back to back. However, starting in second mix, there were multiple courses that you could select from, and each course consisted of only 5 songs back to back. You can see each record box here in this image. Next, in third mix, the groove gauge mechanics in expert mode changed. Previously, you had the same groove gauge behavior as normal mode, and now you have this nice little fully red bar here. At the beginning of the course, you have a full gauge. Every time you get a bad or a poor, the groove gauge decreases. And the gauge, interestingly, the gauge never increases even if you get greats or goods, unlike normal gameplay. That's alright. If the gauge decreases to 0, you fail the course. But if you have even a little life left at the end of the last song, even like one little bar, you clear the course. And for those of you who play dancing games like Dance Dance Revolution, this groove gauge mechanic is kind of similar to the life bar in those games. And next, Beatmania Complete Mix, I would argue, added the most crucial changes to expert mode. For example, before you just used the normal money score system, but after it introduced something called EX score, which stands for expert score. It's basically the number of flashing grades that you earned times 2, plus the number of grades, and then goods and everything below that don't count toward your score. And this scoring system was used for expert for the rest of the series, and it's also used as the main scoring system of Beatmania 2DX. So, 1999. Alright, let's see. Oh, we gotta turn off the laser pointers. Alright, sorry about that. Complete Mix also introduced internet ranking functionality to courses in expert mode. If you cleared enough stages, the game would display this handy-dandy little password here that you could submit to Konami on their official website, as you see. And after you submit your information, Konami would post your score next to everybody else's scores. And the cool thing is, you could compete with other players to see who gets the highest score, and in some games, Konami even offered prizes to the top-ranking players.
They were usually better than floppy disks, too.
Yeah, a little bit. So, now that I've talked about what Konami implemented over the course of the series, let's talk about what they decided to remove and what they decided to add during specific games. The first two games had a mechanic called free zones. Basically, during these zones, which are represented by these red columns here, you can scratch the turntable as much as you want without losing life gauge. However, players had problems with it, and there were also problems with the game itself, so in third mix, they were removed, and any charts that had these free zones, they replaced them with normal scratch notes. And interestingly, the added mechanic was also related to scratches. In Beatmania 7th mix, they introduced something called one-turn scratches, which you see is represented by this green column here. What you're supposed to do is, during that green column, you're supposed to rotate the turntable 360 degrees, as close as possible, and your judgment depends on how close you were to 360 degrees. And that stuck around until the very end of the series. And there's also something similar in 2DX, but it took a while for them to introduce it, didn't it?
Yeah, I think, if I recall correctly, and people can correct me on this because I am less familiar with TDX. I think series? Or was that Hold Notes?
Series is Hold Notes.
Yes, I'm correct, I think. Maybe, yes.
Series is Hold Notes, and then backspin scratches.
Backspins are also serious, and then cast tower added multi-spin scratch.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
There was also Hell Notes were in the game yet series. And that was like
That's awful.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. Let's go on to. Oh, sorry about that. I don't have an awesome segue this time, but let's talk about the origins of Beatmania. I'm going to quickly show off the early designs, and then I'm going to share some of the insights that the staff members shared in a published interview. So, guess what? It's trivia time. Can any Beatmania fans in the audience tell us what the original name of Beatmania was during the early development? Anybody?
I can.
Caldenza, what's up?
Answering on me, DJ Beats.
Yes, that is correct. All right. Hand them the pile of copies and let them pick their favorite color. All right, so, as Caldenza said, Beatmania was originally called DJ Beats. And it was used in this mock-up of the UI here, which I'll turn on the laser pointer, and you can see here. And you can also see that the mock-up differs in various ways graphically. For example, these notes, instead of being rectangular, they're circles here, and there's no judgment line, among many other differences. Yep, I'm really glad it was Beatmania, not DJ Beats here.
Oh yeah.
So, but the interesting thing about this mock-up is that it was not only used before release, but even after release. It was used in promotional materials by Konami. See the screen here? You can even see the screen superimposed here on this cabinet. And one more fun fact, Beatmania used to be spaced as Beat Space Mania. Alright. And now, allow me to briefly share some insights from several staff members who played major roles in developing the first three Beatmania games. And these insights come from a guide which is called Beatmania Press Mix. It's basically a guidebook for the first three Beatmania games that were out at the time, and it also contains staff and artist interviews, which contain valuable first-hand insight of the series' origins. None of this was ever translated into English, so I had to read the original Japanese and basically paraphrase everything you're about to see on the next slide here. So, here's a lineup of the three staff members that were interviewed for Beatmania Press Mix. We've got DJ Nagareo, Reo Nagamo, Ms. King, Kiyoshi Mizuki, and Hiro, Hiroshi Takayasu. And in each bullet point under the names, I summarized their contributions to the overall Beatmania series. And as you can see, each of these staff members served a critical role in forming Beatmania and in steering the direction of the series early on. And personally, I think of these gentlemen as three musketeers of Beatmania. Glad it landed. Alright, so here are some of the many insights that each Beat Musketeer revealed during the interview. Alright, so according to DJ Nagareo up here, the man, he wanted to create a music game initially. The development periods for some of the games were shockingly short. For example, the first Beatmania, 6 months. Second Beatmania, 2 months. Third Beatmania, 2 months. So even though the release dates were staggered, the actual development times were incredibly short. And next, Ms. King, the man who first proposed that Konami create a music game, revealed some interesting tidbits from the planning stages. His initial proposal for a music game originally didn't even have a DJ or club theme. It was apparently supposed to have some sort of like toy or cutesy-like theme. I think it was supposed to like attract the like photo booth crowd, like the casual arcade goers back in the mid-90s. It actually turns out that Hero down here was the one who originally proposed the DJ/club theme, citing the popularity of live performances by bands like Chemical Brothers and Prodigy. And for the controls, Ms. King originally considered 3 buttons and a turntable. However, he realized that 5 buttons were the minimum for resembling a piano and not looking like a basic toy. And so, next, Hero, the man who pitched the DJ/club aesthetic here, shared that staff members would incorporate feedback that they heard about players into future games. For example, yes?
I was just gonna say this is like the first Bemani lore and rumored.
Yep.
It's freaky.
Yep. For example, in second mix, it features hidden modes called Hidden and Double. Hidden basically makes the notes disappear halfway down the play field, and then Double, one person can play a chart that was meant for 2 players on 1 light bar. And Hidden came about when one Konami staff member heard that somebody in an arcade was playing Beatmania with a newspaper covering the screen. So basically, memorizing the chart and not seeing the notes. And then Double came about when they heard that people were so bored with the 1-player mode that they were playing 2-player mode by themselves. So they added that double mode as a courtesy to those players. And finally, in third mix, they actually added a Eurobeat song in response to a false rumor that a Eurobeat song was hidden in second mix.
And I think that's another good piece of trivia. Does anyone know what that song was? It's a Bemani classic.
Love to me.
Yes! Yes! Thank you very much. Give that a good applause. Sorry for gathering in excitement. Alright, so, having explained the core gameplay changes, and origins of the Beatmania series, I'd like to show you the numerous iterations and a few spin-off series as well, with the help of Dark Chow. So, first I'm going to show all the title screens for all the arcade games that were released in the series. So, as I said earlier, there were 13 games in the main Beatmania series. Each game added or removed songs and introduced new options that players could select. I'm not going to go into detail today about every single game, but I just want you to see how many games were released in the span of like 5 years. I think even less than 5 years, actually. Yeah. And for anyone who's interested in what each and every single game looks like and what songs are in them, I encourage you to go watch gameplay videos on YouTube or go down to their arcade, go downstairs to the arcade after this presentation. We have a few of these games for you. Just a couple. Yes, just a couple. And speaking of just a couple, I'd like to turn this segment over to Dark Chow.
Alright, so you guys know about the recently released Lightning Model 2DX machine? Yes. So this is the one that's it's available at all Round 1 locations, I believe now. And now we finally, after so many years, have a real localized, mostly in English, 2DX.
Yes.
Super cool. People have been asking for that forever.
2 models of cabinets, wow.
Yeah, 2 models. So you've got your old 2DX machine, which we have a few of those downstairs as well right now. Did you guys know that there's actually a 3rd super secret cabinet?
Yeah.
It's called Beatmania 2. And other than a few that were created for test locations and a very, very limited Korean release, they don't exist. So that's the boy. It looks very similar to a Keyboard Mania machine. If you were to take the Keyboard Mania panel off, put VEFX, it's got a big ass CRT in there.
Yes.
But that's my dream machine. So what most people don't realize is the current iteration of Beatmania is a spin-off of the original 5-key series.
Yes.
And the DX was put into the title for the model of the cabinet.
Deluxe.
Think about that for a second. So that cabinet in the middle, the one that everyone's familiar with, that was the deluxe version of Beatmania 2.
But as we know, it ended up being the version of Beatmania 2, DX. And the series is still active to this day, with I believe the latest game was released in October?
Yes.
Yes. Alright. But back to 5-key.
Here's the thing, as if 5-key couldn't get more obscure. After they made Beatmania 2 and 2DX, this is in 2000 now, Beatmania 2 was 1999, they were like, alright, let's go back to 5-key. This hardware it's low spec, the audio samples are starting to get cruddy, we can't fit any more on these EEPROMs. Let's redo the hardware. So what did they come up with? Something way more janky and way more problematic. Let's put it in a big beefy thing, alright? Big beefy thing that weighs like 1,000 pounds that naturally, just by sitting there, will cave in on itself over time.
And the details are to be explained in Dark Chow's.
Oh, I will rant. I will rant.
You will rant, but first, before we go on to the next segment, I would like to say that Beatmania 3 did have foot pedals. There's one pedal on each side. It's mostly used to enable the audio effectors, which Dark Chow will describe later, but some songs have what's called a special foot version chart, which has pedal notes.
Yeah, so imagine an additional lane on 5 key where you just,
Yes.
that's it. And when you're playing a foot chart, your VEFX is not available.
I don't see anything interesting in this image, do you?
No space button. I don't see any space button.
No?
No. And that's the thing, like the backgrounds, they're very crisp in Beatmania 3.
Yes.
You know, they had more stuff to work with. They have these really neat layered background animations when they removed frames that were kind of pancaked.
Yeah. And speaking of cake, anyway, let's move on. So, trivia time again. How many Beatmania 3 games were released in the series? All right, let's go. This gentleman in the front here. Two. Oh, not quite.
Very wrong.
Two. Let's go bunny ears here.
4.
Ooh, that is a very
Close.
good guess. All right, one more. Let's go. This gentleman in the front.
5.
5. Yes, that is correct. Give that man a floppy.
So, other than the initial release of Beatmania 3, wow, so this is interesting. So, there's Beatmania Core Remix. Alright, so they were still actively producing Beatmania 1. So what had happened was, Beatmania 1 kept getting these new releases, these new full mixes. So we got Core, 6th, 7th, and then the final. Beatmania 3, imagine it being like, oh my god, imagine it being like Borderlands 3, okay? You get Borderlands 3, and then you get these, what do they call them? Not expansion packs, they call them, God, what is it called? Season Pass, there you go. Sorry, I'm stuck in the age of this. So yeah, imagine instead of buying a Season Pass, which would be, you know, assume DLC, alright? So you've got original Beatmania 3, and then they release a new version, which is Append Core Remix. So, oh, let's add the new tracks from Beatmania 1 into Beatmania 3 for the people who have purchased Beatmania 3. So this is a very crazy and weird convoluted thing. I don't know who okayed this at Konami. It does make sense if you think about it, but like, what? Like, how is Beatmania 3 supposed to succeed as a successor to... Anyway, I'm gonna go on another tangent. But that's how the Beatmania 3 games were released until the final.
And as a brief aside, the gameplay screens of the Beatmania 3 games you can see down here, they were kind of close thematically to each of the mainline releases. And now, how do you replicate the arcade experience at home? Well, Konami did so on several home consoles, mainly the PlayStation. They released a whopping 13 games for it. 7 of them were straight AC ports, and then 6 of them were home version only exclusives. Not only did they release arcade translations of their games, but they also released little cute Game Boy Color and Wonder Swan versions. Very interesting. I encourage you to look them up on YouTube when you have the time. And finally, they had 2 games on PlayStation 2. One was actually a typing simulator / rhythm game called Beatmania Dot. Yes. And then finally, the other one was released in 2006 in the United States, combined with 2DX.
Now, real quick, I think this is a good trivia I want to throw in. We got enough floppies right here. If you guys are good.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, does anyone know what the last CS iteration Beatmania 5 key release was for home consoles?
6 mix plus cooler.
Correct. That
Yes.
one gets a floppy.
Give that man a floppy. And so, how do you replicate the arcade experience at home with these fine controllers here? In 1998, Konami released their first controller that was officially bundled with the home version of the game. However, it was made of chintzy plastic and is completely unplayable on newer games. And so in 1999, they released something called the DJ Station Pro, which looks a lot nicer. It even has little lights under these buttons when you hit them, and it has a turntable that's a reasonable facsimile of the arcade version. And it has some cool little bells and whistles, which I won't go into here. But I think the most interesting one is actually the controller they released in Europe in 2000. Remember how I said the buttons were laid out like piano keys? Well, I think somebody at Konami translated that literally when they made this layout there. Yeah, it's fun to look at, but not very fun to play on. And then finally, you might be familiar with these controllers here. These were the 2DX KOC, which were the controllers you used to play 2DX on PS2. And then the one in the middle is Phoenix One, which is a premium arcade-style controller, which I highly recommend. All right, and that concludes my segment, and so I would like to turn this over to Dark Chow.
Oh boy, okay. So, I'm going to go over Beatmania's hardware, then I'm going to go over Beatmania 3's hardware, and I'm going to try to not go on a ramble because she's downstairs, and if anyone's seen her, she's, anyway, and then I'm going to go over some cabinet stories.
How do you feel about light switches?
Light switches?
What was that?
Yeah, how do you feel about the fire beat?
I love the
You're going to hear about the fire
Oh,
beat.
I'm sure I am.
But first, we got to start with Beatmania hardware.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go.
So, this is the beautiful babe. This is the full size, which, if you guys can't tell, this is not a full size. This cute thing that is gracing our presence is the Beatmania Mini. There is a mini version of a cabinet, and our next slide, the next slide, is going to show you a comparison between the full size and the mini.
Oh, let's go to it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we
Look
go.
at that. So, honestly, that picture doesn't really do it justice. You can see it in person. Yeah, there you go. Like, that's
This
a
picture does it justice.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
And she's going to go back downstairs, so you'll see her next to two tall boys. So yeah, the DJ mate. Let's go over this thing.
Yep.
So this board was based on Konami hardware from the 90s that was made to run like beat 'em ups, and there was a system they made called the GX, which had swappable cartridges. So imagine taking a game like X-Men, okay? Like everyone's familiar with X-Men, and then saying, okay, now run a music game. And then remember, music games aren't a thing. What? Like seriously. So as you can imagine, they're pretty hard to maintain. The main processor on the board is a Motorola 68K. You know, they work. Game data is stored on EEPROMs, and most of the sound data is stored on a hard drive. It's just a little ID drive that kind of hangs out. There are 4 sound amps you can see at the bottom of that board there. There is 1 per each channel. So there's left normal audio, right normal audio, left bass channel, right bass channel. And they all have little capacitors on them that like to leak. And luckily they leak vertically. Konami learned there. The X-Men board, they mounted and there were other beat 'em up boards that use this, but they were mounted horizontally on those boards, and they are a nightmare. Some of those, I have a Bucky O'Hare board that refuses to boot unless you fix the damn thing. So, I have a love-hate relationship with this hardware, but
Well, you're gonna love this next one then. Beatmania 3 hardware.
well, we'll talk about the cab first.
Yes.
So, you guys see that first photo, how half of the neons are glowing and the other half aren't? So, the neons do this really cool thing where they pulse, and they do a thing that, like, you see on pinball machines from the early 90s where they vary the voltage going to either incandescents or, in this case, neons. As far as I know, this is the only arcade machine that does this, where when it kicks out bass, it's programmed to glow, and you get this like crazy, really awesome glow. The problem is, they hired a factory to make these neon transformers, these inverters, and they epoxied everything in. So no one's been able to perfectly replicate one of these freaking inverters. So they all die. If you ever see a Beatmania 3, you're lucky to see any of the neons work. You're lucky to see Beatmania 3 work. Let alone use the floppy drive. Like, we're giving you prizes that I can't,
We can't guarantee, but
you'll ever be able to use, but they're freaking cool.
yes.
This thing is huge. The cabinet is huge. It's probably the tallest arcade machine that we have. It towers over a 2DX. It towers over a 6-player X-Men.
I'd actually like to jump in. Doesn't every single dimension on the cabinet actually surpass the regular cabinet size?
Oh, yeah.
Every single dimension.
Yeah.
Imagine moving that into one of your homes.
Oh, I've done. I had one in my kitchen for a few years. Yeah. So the VEFX system on Beatmania 3, it's actually way more in depth than what we're used to in 2DX. You've actually got, you see there's 2 little LEDs there. One of those LEDs is to say, okay, your effect mode is on, this is on the background track. So you only apply, your flange, your reverb, whatever. to your background track, or you can switch it to the bottom one, which is your samples. So what you're punching through has the effect you want. They added effects in there that there are similar ones in 2DX, but you could actually crank up the volume of the cab. Cabinet operators did not like this. So they'd set a volume, and then they'd come in and be like, why is this thing 3 times as loud? It's because they hit the pedal, they'd get the effect on, and they'd crank up the volume was an effect. So that never made it outside of Beatmania 3. Foot pedals. I love foot pedals. I love 5-key. And then the floppy disk drive. I've rambled about that a little bit. Some of you now have floppies that you may be able to use one day. That's how you saved your scores. That's how you unlocked, well, that's how you saved courses. And there's Sozai mode, was a mode that was specific to floppies.
Yes. And I'd also like to jump in, for those of you familiar with EMUs, this was sort of the precursor to that.
Yeah.
Before you had the magnetic and database cards, you basically had these floppies here to save your games. It was actually pretty forward-thinking of Konami at the time. That and internet ranking.
Yeah, and then they, any of their PlayStation 1 driven hardware, they used PlayStation 1 memory cards.
Yes.
So in Japan, for DDR, you could make edits and bring them to the arcade. And actually, if you guys take a close look at the Dance Maniacs machine downstairs, there's a freaking cutout for where PS1 memory card reader was gonna go. And I think they decided to kill Dance Maniacs like right when it went out the door.
We have at least one audience member who loves Dance Maniacs, so we have several.
I was gonna say, I know more than one.
Love
Thing's great.
Dance Maniacs. Shout outs to all of you.
And your wrists at some point. You know how it is.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh. So that's the thing that I've been rambling about. That is a fire beat. So the fire beat was used on Beatmania 3, Keyboard Mania, Pop-In Music for a little while, which it did succeed the DJ name for a bit until they switched to PlayStation 2 hardware. And then Paradise, just for one mix. It's got a few different PCBs on there, so if we can start at the top. What we're looking at here, the best photo we could find, which I feel like an idiot because I was literally holding one of these in my hands earlier today. This is a Keyboard Mania fire beat. So the top board is a MIDI board that interfaces with the keyboards on Keyboard Mania, but Beatmania 3 has a kind of similar board that handles the audio effects system, and it does use MIDI. Then there's the sub CPU board that sits on top of the main CPU board. And then underneath, you've got, in this case, you've got 2 CD-ROM drives for, that's what a majority of the games use. Beatmania 3 was the only one that used an ID hard drive in addition to a CD-ROM drive. So there was plenty of space to expand Beatmania 3, and it's a shame it never really got expanded past what it did. And then on the side, you see all those audio outs. You've got 3 line outs and 1 line in. No, other way around. 3 line, whatever. There you go.
3 lines.
3 lines.
4, wasn't it?
It's 4. It's.
There's lines on the hardware.
Oh yes, you would need 3 line. What? No, brain hurts. Fire beat. Okay, let's go.
Anyway, don't worry, if you can figure out that problem and that's your only problem with the thing, you are way past
That is true.
everything else.
That is true.
It was designed to succeed in the previous hardware, though, as you said earlier, right?
Yeah, and that's part of its charm. It's definitely, it's got higher spec than a DJ main, obviously. It ran on PowerPC hardware. I'm having flashbacks, guys. I'm sorry. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'm gonna start crying. Oh, speaking of crying.
Oh, you're gonna cry on this next slide.
So
You're all
yeah.
gonna cry when you see this.
I'm going to share some interesting stories, one of which is actually, it just finished up downstairs. So, yeah, the first thing we're going to go over are the realities of aging cabinets. And this doesn't just apply to Beatmania, this applies to all arcades. The old things happen every day. I'm sure just today, so, anyone that's familiar with what we do specifically with SavePoint, we aim to preserve this stuff and share it and educate people. So, naturally we try our damnedest every single day to save the stuff, but the reality of it is you can't save it all.
Some people did save a cabinet in California, right?
Oh yeah, some buddies of ours, actually. Mr. DJ Konami himself. No, so
Yes.
This is a story I love to tell, and this is a true story.
Yes. Money for you,
So, how it goes. There's two really good friends of mine. The other guy I actually haven't met in person, but there's Kenshan and Ero Kitsune. And what is his online handle? Sanai? Okay. So they were hanging out, just doing arcade nerd things, and Kenshan hands his cell phone over to Ero Kitsune and says, "Dude, look at this video that was just posted." And it was a local news channel in California, and they're talking about littering, and they're showing all these like images of things that have been dumped in the desert outside of LA, and one of them was a Beatmania cabinet. And then one of the guys is like, "I know where that is, let's go." And then they got in a car, I imagine just like the beginning of like Day of the Tentacle, they get in the car, they're gone for like 3 hours, and then, well, is it there? No, it's gotta be there. So it's nighttime by the time they find it, but they freaking found it. And they parted the whole thing to the wood, like everything. They took everything. So if you're gonna show the next slide. There they are, after successfully parting out a Beatmania cabinet in the desert in the middle of the night. I love those guys. And going back to what we were saying about things surviving, there's actually a lot of parts from that machine in one of our machines downstairs. So it's a cute little small world thing.
Basically, today, if you're playing on a Beatmania cab, somebody probably knows where exactly that cab came from and its exact history. That's how few cabs
That's true.
are.
Everything has a story.
This one's really interesting.
Lord. All right.
Happy birthday, Beatmania, right?
Yeah. So we were on the way back from Dragon Con this year, and a member of the Discord that we're in, Beatmania featuring Discord Comes True,
Yes.
reached out and said, "Is anybody near Kentucky? There's a 5-key machine and it needs to be gone at the end of the week."
I remember this.
We're driving back with truckloads of arcades, and I'm like, yes. Yes, I'm okay with not sleeping, dropping this truck off, going to Kentucky, I don't care. And like, it could have been somebody trying to like, the equivalent of like a human version, like Rat Trap, and I would have been like, cheese? Yes. So, you know, naturally in the middle of the night, I wind up in a sketchy barn full of arcade machines in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And this is exactly how I found the machine, and I told the guy, hold up. So it was under this happy birthday banner. They had a party in this barn the night prior, and he was just like, "Yeah, this machine's been sitting here a while, I think maybe."
Photo, as you can see.
Yeah, so when we got the thing, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Like when I say it had been sitting in a barn, and Lord, the smell. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, when you play it, you'll get a whiff of Mildewy Barn. It is nothing like it was. Oh my God. Yeah, I took a couple photos when I was cleaning up the cabinet. So the mice used it as a 3-story apartment. So if you look at the mini here, imagine, you know, the bottom, you know, where the coins go, the DJ main is. It's like their living room. And then you've got the bedroom upstairs under the control panel. And then you've got the monitor portion. That's it's more bedroom, I guess. And then up there in their penthouse, there were mice nests everywhere. But you know, they ran up the wiring harnesses and used each section as a.
And just to note, a rat's nest is the caption here.
Yeah. And then, you know, of course, you know, it's the middle of the night, I'm tired as hell, and we get the thing in the trailer, and then it goes whack and gets stuck. Just like that. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to push it back out, take the marquee off, which blows my mind because my mic fit in that trailer just fine. So, yeah. This photo, as some of you in the audience are already familiar with, this was taken here at MagFest on Thursday or Wednesday. I don't remember. It's all a blur at this point. I thought I'd back into all the mouse stuff, all the worst of it. No. So we opened up the turntable to, you know, tweak it, and oh, yikes. So this thing has been completely stripped down, and that's also why it was off yesterday and part of today. But yeah, so there's some people. Actually, there's some people in the audience right now. There they are.
Hey, mate.
Cleaning stuff out.